So we've got Nosferatu v. Dracula here. Not versus, but v. So more as in a court case. You can trace the roots of this phenomenon back to somewhere between 1428 and 1431, when Vlad the Impaler was born. Although Dracula and Vlad had very little in common, Nosferatu and Drac were nearly twins. Only the names have been changed to protect the innocent. Guilty? Get it? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Overly Honest Movie Reviews. My name is Chris, and as always, I try to give you guys what you want to see. Please like this video, then subscribe and follow me for more content like this. I cover anything and everything related to movies, both old and new. May 16th, 1897, the gothic horror novel Dracula by Bram Stoker was released. The novel introduced us to Count Dracula. Although the connections between Vlad and Count Dracula are pretty limited despite popular belief. I mean, you have the name Vlad Dracula or Vlad the Third Dracula, but beyond that, there are only a few miscellaneous items which have more to do with Romania than Vlad himself. Oddly enough, when Dracula was first released, it wasn't a huge hit. While reviewers praised it, it didn't immediately catch on. When first released, it looked more like an adventure story. Sadly, Stoker was poor and Dracula did little to help. Unfortunately, when he passed away, he still hadn't realized the success of the book. His widow actually forced to sell his notes and outlines of the novel at a Sotheby's auction in 1913. They were purchased for a little over £2, which today is about $300. I can't even imagine. This is where the story starts to get interesting. Piranha Film, a small and short-lived German film studio, founded in part by occultist artist Albin Grau, opened its doors in 1921. Grau most certainly lied from day one about where he got his inspiration for his screenplay. He put the project on the shoulders of Henrik Gallen, who had previously worked on Der Golem. Golem, not the same. Although the studio didn't have the film rights to Dracula, the novel, they proceeded without hesitation. In July of 1921, filming began on Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. The production only had one camera available for filming, so this meant that there was only one original negative for the film. F.W. Murnau took on the directing duties, and the world of vampires would be changed forever from this moment on. While there were deviations from the novel, it's clear to anybody that this was nearly an exact copy or a ripoff of the novel itself. Some characters were dropped, others had their names changed. The biggest difference is probably that Count Orlok, Murnau's version of Dracula, doesn't actually make other vampires when he bites them, he just flat out kills people. One interesting take is that in Stoker's original novel, sunlight only weakened Dracula. On the other hand, it could actually kill Orlok. The film previewed March 4th, 1922 in Berlin's Zoological Garden, with its premiere not long after on March 15th. To this day, the film is still considered an unauthorized and unofficial adaptation of the novel. A lot of weight is given to the name changes and the intent behind that. Some say this was done to distance itself and avoid accusations of copying. However, the original title cards state that it was based on Stoker's original novel. So, clearly they weren't trying to hide that. One of the biggest ironies in this story is that Nosferatu itself has ended up being remade via both authorized and unauthorized means. Stoker's heirs sued over the film, and courts ended up ruling that every copy needed to be destroyed. Thankfully, some prints survived, and we now have one of the greatest examples of German expressionist horror ever made. Ironically, though, the success of Nosferatu not only caused its initial fall, but it also gave rise to what would become one of the biggest horror icons in history. To be fair, even Stoker himself borrowed the ideas of Dracula from others. There were numerous papers written that he had taken. He went so far as to create a theatrical adaptation, have it performed one time and one time only. Can you imagine being at that performance? It was on May 18th, 1897. This was to establish his own copyright before releasing the novel. In 1921, there was a Hungarian-Austrian film titled Dracula's Death. Sadly, this is a lost film, and although there are reports of an existing copy in a Hungarian archive, it's still considered lost. I'll likely cover lost films in another episode. So this film didn't officially count, as it didn't really follow Stoker's novel. I thought it was a neat inclusion. I mean, look at this poster. After Nosferatu was released, the novel Dracula began to see increases in popularity across the globe. Stoker's widow led the legal battle to have Nosferatu destroyed and removed from public screenings. The craziest part of it is that she eventually gave up the fight, and that more than likely led to the future of Dracula. In 1924, she licensed the story to a playwright to create a play, which ended up touring England for years. It eventually settled down in Europe, and then was picked up by an American stage production company. When the play premiered in New York, Bela Lugosi played the role of Dracula. This eventually led to Universal producing and distributing the film, which was based on the stage play, not the novel, even though the stage play was based on the novel, but still. This was the first time Dracula actually had sound. Nosferatu was a silent film. We're so impressed by films being shot back-to-back, such as The Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean, John Wick, etc. However, Dracula took this to another level long before. Literally shot 2 films at the same time. 2 completely different movies, same sets, but this was Hollywood's attempt at the time to bring foreign language audiences films. I could spend an entire video just comparing Dracula and the Spanish language version. Though the films were shot on the same set, they were 2 very different experiences. Personally, I would argue that Lugosi's portrayal is the definitive Dracula. Although many, and I mean many, have come after, he is what set the standard that few have lived up to. And when I say Dracula, I'm talking vampires in general, so I'm being a little loose there. You know, Dracula is often portrayed as the vampire, like the lead vampire. I debated on having a list scroll on the bottom like I did with the Amityville video, but this would have taken the entire video, probably plus some. I mean, there's already 107 versions of just Stoker's Dracula to date. The only film series that beats this, or the only fictional character that beats this, is Sherlock Holmes. Instead, I'm just going to put a wiki link down in the description section that'll take you to this absurd list of films that have been created starring vampires. Somehow it took until the year 2000, almost 70 years later, for the Library of Congress to add it to the National Film Registry, which is just ridiculous to me. In closing, I would like to point out that there is a close second in my opinion. Although still distant, Christopher Lee's portrayal of the character in the Hammer Dracula films was fantastic. Sadly, I keep him at a distance because Lee's statements often, instead of crediting Lugosi, often was criticizing him for his performance, for his movement, for his voice. I mean, I may be a homer here, but it was hard to beat the classic. While there have been countless other actors that played the role, Gary Oldman, who loved Lugosi's version, was brilliant. Lastly, I also have a soft spot for Blade, so stab me with a wooden stake. With that, I ask you, who was your favorite Dracula? Which film was your favorite? Are you more of the old school or more of the new? Thank you again for joining me. Please comment below and let me know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to like this video, then subscribe and follow me if you'd like to see more videos like this.